NFL report cards came out. A lot of stuff, some sad stuff for your Cleveland Browns, Scott. We have the conversation around Travis Kelce, maybe not retiring now. Caitlin Clark with a preseason game and the Indiana Fever. Wild stuff going on there. Sold out, having to change the arena. We'll talk about that. Luka playing the Mavs, you guys. The Army baseball team flying in a military. So much stuff to talk about today. We're going to get to all of it. Really excited, as you can tell. But most importantly, let's start it off. Mikey's wearing a collared shirt today. Scott, you got him. You got him all pro.
I wanted to display my professionalism so people will respect what I have to say. And thank you guys for dressing up. I see you guys really take this seriously. Apparently, I'm the only one on the show who can take it serious.
He's got business. He's got us there. Scott's got a little bit of a half hoodie or something going on. What is that?
Who has a half hoodie? How does one do that?
Okay, there it is. Oh, there you go. You do the rest of the show.
Casual Friday look.
It's Casual Friday. Okay. Well, look, I wanted to start off with this because it's near and dear to my heart as a former defensive football player. Look, this piece of technology, and those just listening, I threw up a tweet here with the wristband, the foldable wristband. Okay. And this person is saying it's the off season, but I keep that thing on me. And this person is using the wristband here to have their grocery list on. And I just respect the hell out of this. I would like to get your opinion on this. Any other situations in life where you would be using this wristband or any other football technology off the field, Scott?
Yeah, this guy's definitely married. I need to start implementing this in my life in all of the errands that I need to run here, especially once baby number 2 comes. But I'm actually surprised, and I respect the fact that he is still using he's using the lost art of handwriting the notes and everything, as opposed to just sliding in the iPhone there. Could have been just as easy.
Respect. How bad has your guys' handwriting gotten like over the last couple of years? Like you barely ever write anything with your hand.
No, I forced myself to write over the past year, so it's actually improving, even better than what it was in high school.
Oh,
what
Scott.
A nerd! I bet Scott still knows how to do cursive.
Freaking
cursive! I don't even want dying art.
Typical Yaley nerd writing, handwriting. Oh, you're drawing in your diary. Get him.
I do have to admit, I was one of those losers that literally wrote solely in cursive through freshman year of high school.
Scott, why?
That's kind of cool, actually.
Yeah, it was
and
very
it explains
small.
So much about you.
We're gonna have to dive a little bit more into that, your cursive obsession, and we'll unpack that at some point. But I wanted to.
It's just skin deep.
Okay, it goes deep. You know who else is for sure wearing this thing to the grocery store, and probably in a lot of other aspects of life, is Jim Harbaugh, head coach of the LA Chargers. So this I wanted to jump to because. All right, for those just listening, I popped this up here, a tweet. The LA Chargers jumped from 30th to 5th in the NFLPA's club report card. So if you're living under a rock and you haven't seen, the NFLPA has released their annual report cards for all the teams. I think it's the 3rd year that they have done it. And we're going to get into it here in a second, a little bit details. But the Chargers were one of the teams that had the best jump of all. Like it said, they're 30th to 5th overall. They improved in every category. 6 areas now ranked top 5 in the NFL and no category below a C. Last year, they had 6 categories below a C. For me, the biggest takeaway from this is culture and how important getting the right head coach to set that culture is for a franchise. Thoughts on this? What's your takeaway here?
Yeah, man, Harbaugh brought it, but I love how you started off with anybody who lives under a rock. You could have added and or lives in a van because we had to explain this a little bit to Mikey beforehand.
And I still don't fully understand. Could you just explain it to me a little bit slower this time?
Mike,
what goes into this? What are all the variables that go into this ranking?
You remember when you would get a report card home from school and it was mostly D's and F's and mom and dad would be really mad at you and then you would cry and cry. It's sort of like that.
I'm with you so far.
Okay.
So it goes. So the coaching decision goes in there, and then your offseason pickups. So it's all your offseason moves is what.
No, so here it goes. Let me throw this up to get a little clarity here. All right. So this is partially of it right here. So it goes, and here's sort of the breakdown. And these are just 6 of the categories, and we can actually look at it in more depth. But coach, owner, food, travel, weight room, treatment of family. And Mike, these are ranked or rated by the actual players on these franchises. So these are basically self-reflection. These guys know them near and dear.
Wow,
and Scott,
that's cool.
I'm going to scroll down here, Scott.
Don't.
Scroll down, and we're looking for CLE, a nice orange team. Pretty far down, dude. I am.
Keep scrolling. Keep scrolling.
Oh, okay. Scott, they are 30th. The Cleveland Browns are 30th. I know this is kind of this hurts a little bit here. A lot of C's. They did get 1A, and that is in weight room. What's your takeaway here? And also, okay, well, first of all, so let me give you a chance to defend that first, Scott, before I ask you another question. How do you feel about that?
This is just another manifestation of Ohio against the world, even against its own team. Like, just another element.
The world, it's them. It's self-supporting.
Scott, it's Ohio against Ohio.
Party here.
I know. Oh my gosh. No, this is hard to look at, man. The most striking thing, and it's way too small, so I cannot read that right now. But the worst thing about this is I think the training staff was the lowest graded. And we've been talking about culture, right? We talked about Harbaugh right there at the top, bringing the Chargers from the depths to the top 5. We're talking about culture, and the bedrock of culture in any organization, on any football team, in any locker room, starts with the training staff. We've talked about how cool the training staff generally is on average, and how, like, funny, and you could have a good time with them as you're getting taped up and going through rehab and doing all that kind of stuff. If you have a bad training staff, dude, that must be such a cancerous spot to be in.
That's a great point.
Probably why Deshaun double tore his Achilles. Seriously. Bad trainers not giving him the right exercises, or rushing him back, or not doing enough stability stuff.
That, and
either that or going and doing TikTok dances on the side of the road.
I'm glad
either one.
Either one. But here we can see this is from the actual source. The Browns literally have the lowest grade for training staff with a C-, and the lowest grade for training room. Those two kind of go hand in hand there. Not a good thing to be at the bottom of the NFL for, because I think that there is a lot of truth there. That's like a kind of a bedrock and a building block of culture with a football team. The other team that had a huge improvement. So we talked about the LA Chargers, and while obviously they got a new coach who has a great culture and instilled that, and they flipped almost everything. But what do you know? The Commanders as well. Look at this jump. And for those just listening, it's showing their jump from last year to this year. Treatment of families, F- to B+. And just take a look at all these. The only one that didn't improve really, the locker room only improved from F- to F. They probably just vacuumed it or something.
F- to F. Oh my gosh.
What do you guys?
The coaches just went to the players and said, "Hey, is there any way you could round up on this?"
Extra credit.
My owner's gonna see this report card, guys. Just give me a break here.
Well, for owners, the interesting thing is we're not seeing it here, but guess who got the worst grade for owners? The only franchise that got an F for owner.
Oh.
Wait. Let me guess. Actually, it's
that's why I said guess.
Let me guess. Here's the thing: you were gonna rush me.
Were you rushing or were you dragging? You have 5 seconds.
Okay.
Patriots.
No, it was New York Jets. Woody Johnson, the only owner to be F, and it's like, okay, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. The most meddling. But I wanted to ask you guys, which of these, and it's kind of hard to see all of them at a glance here, which of these criteria do you think is the most important for a franchise, or which would you personally care about the most?
Well, you would think like treatment of families kind of permeates like the culture and the feeling of your work approach. But then I saw the Eagles had like a C- on treatment of families and win the Super Bowl. So no correlation there. You treat the family bad, it's fine. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing is the Eagles actually dropped quite a bit on a lot of things from last year. And you look here. Let me show you this one. They're at 22nd in the NFL, and then the other Super Bowl team is at 26 overall. It's like, so, and then you look at the teams at the top, Miami, Minnesota, like Miami, all right, damn near A+ and everything. Pretty soft franchise. They're a pretty soft team. Like, I know it's funny to say, but that's actually the reality, and that's what the kind of the gripe on them, or the
chip. What they say: C students or B students work for C students, and A students work for B students.
Something like that.
No.
And
something like that.
drop out and found their own companies. Scott, what's the most important to you? What do you think?
It's all trickle down for me in this regard. So it's the coaches. The coaches are hired usually by owners who have the right mindset or have the right mindset and don't necessarily know how to implement it from top down. So that's why they go for the top coaches, or at least aim for that. They may not always hit the mark, but that's what they're going for. So I think it all starts at the coach. That's why I may be influenced here by the way this is built, but the coaches being that first marker, I think actually has a massive effect. Because look, we've all been a part of, I know you and I, Nick, coming from D1AA realm, have been in facilities that are not top notch. Let's put it that way. And it didn't really matter to us in the moment, right? It was like all about the guys, the team, and everything else that spanned out from that. So like the training staff, the coaches, the coaching staff, and all of that actually played far more of a factor to me. So like in my mindset, based off of my experience, that's how I look at it. It's like coach, how they instill the culture and how that trickles down into the staff at large and then the team. And that's what's most important. So I don't really care so much about the weight room look or the facilities and how they're viewed or anything like that. But Mikey's right. The treatment of family, like that just stems from how the coach approaches the team mentality. And it's just infectious at that point. And then on the flip side, you get the infectious nature of a bad culture and it spans out into everything. And then you're starting to look at facilities, and if they're crap, it only makes it that much worse.
Yeah, that's true. I like what you said right there, talking about the locker room stuff, because I did a little statistical analysis here. Okay. And this is what I discovered. 9 teams scored an A or above, and I'm using A- as well, an A or above on locker room. Okay. Only 2 of those 9 made the playoffs. And then the teams, the 15 teams scored a D or an F on the report card there for locker room. And 8 of those, so over half, made the playoffs. So little bit of I don't know, they say causation doesn't equal correlation or the other way. Scott, help me out here. But it's something to the fact that, okay, the locker rooms, it actually doesn't really matter. It's actually about the people and the community that you build there. I wanted to ask Mikey this because you did play at a higher level than us and you went to, some bigger time schools. What was the best locker room that you ever went to?
Oh man. Well, the visitor locker rooms are usually pretty cramped. But Stanford had a great visitor locker room. Stanford did. Cal's was horrible. Cal actually, they put like a stink bomb in the vents before the game.
I heard
So
that.
we were in the locker room and it just reeked. It was horrible. Like people were like almost fainting. Everyone had to get out. People were changing outside. It was horrible.
Packer must have got in there.
Todd Packer
for you.
That is
in the
not
vent.
a bird. That actually, Andy said
Stanford
that
had the
thing.
best one
Stanford?
that I was at.
Andy said that same thing. So I went back to one of Andy's games this year when they played Cal, Oregon State versus Cal, and I talked to him after the game, and he said that same thing, that there was some sort of like stink bomb in the away team, the visitor locker room. There's a conspiracy here with Cal football. They are trying to poison their opposition.
Yeah, let me tell you something. We lost that game, and the stink had something to do with it.
Scott, what are you excited about coming out of the combine so far?
Is one of those really cool spectacles because it feels somewhat like the Olympics do to a certain extent, where you see people like performing at their peak level because they've been training for this ever since the season ended and everything like that. And they're coming in with it with that mindset of performing and putting up the best numbers, the PRs that they've ever had. So I'm just excited to see the rest of the week.
One of my favorite things is when they do the overlay of like the different 40s and you can see, oh, this dude right now running this year.
Oh yeah.
To Jalen Hurts. Or actually one of the coolest was last year when Luke McCaffrey ran and they did the overlay of Christian, his older brother.
Yeah.
And they showed Luke actually beating Christian. As a resident older brother on this podcast, I would be very offended if any network showed anything like that. So that's what we got. We've got the lineman or the D lineman went today, and then we got skill positions coming over the weekend. And we'll see.
Today is in German today or U.S. today?
That's a good question. Today, German today will be American tomorrow. American. You know what?
Yesterday.
Pass. German evening will be American today. We're 9 hours ahead. Okay. I'm
Oh,
living
okay.
in the future. I'm living in the future. Let's pivot here quick to basketball. Okay. All 15,000 tickets sold to Caitlin Clark's WNBA preseason game back at Iowa sold out in less than 40 minutes. Several tickets have already been listed on secondary markets between $600 to $1,000. Dude, and I wanted to bring this back up because this was a huge conversation about Caitlin Clark. Obviously, she was a rookie in the WNBA last year. And there's this whole conversation of, oh, is she the face of the league? The WNBA got this huge surge in popularity where they're having sold out arenas in a way that they have not really had before this. And there's, some voices trying to downplay Caitlin Clark's role in that. And I think this right here, this is a preseason game showing how popular this is, how excited people are to watch. I think this just kind of backs up the argument that she really is the face of the league. What do you think?
I get why they were pushing back because it's like, hey, be here for a few years before you take the mantle. But I don't think she was the one who was personally putting that crown on her own head. It was essentially the media just hyping her up, which they had been doing for 4 years. And now that she was in the professional league, like they just took it to the next level. So I get why people were pushing back. But I think, look, this is just another feather in the cap of that being a reality. I mean, yes, she has the media machine behind her, but at the same time, she's selling out arenas.
I get your point there of kind of some of the pushback because I mean you've been pretty vocal about okay, let's be a little bit slower to crown people as certain things. A lot of us get excited about this is the next GOAT, this quarterback or whatever it is, whatever sport, whatever position. And I think that is a good point that we shouldn't be so quick to crown people certain things. But I just think that it's so obvious here with the kind of the Caitlin Clark effect on how popular the WNBA has become in this past year, and that how she has had a very, very big role in that. And this is exactly what sports leagues need. They need a face. They need a story. And Caitlin Clark has kind of brought that. And I mean, I heard some other pundits, sports media people talking about who's the face of the NBA, because we've been talking about this as LeBron is kind of getting to the tail end of his career. Who's going to be the next face of the NBA? Because it is so important for ratings. Like when Michael Jordan retired, the NBA, their ratings dropped by like 40% like the following year. And so having that is just absolutely crucial. What do you think of this? I heard somebody say that the NBA has actually only had 3 faces of the league in its entire history. Okay. And it's being very, very particular about who counts as the face of the league. And they said it's only been Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan, and LeBron James. Those are the 3 who have been definitive faces of the NBA. What do you think?
I think that's appropriate and makes a whole lot of sense. I think Kobe is just underneath those 3 as being the bridge between MJ and LeBron.
Why do you think Kobe wasn't more used as a face? Because he had the ability.
I think it's tough because also he played in Los Angeles. I think part of it might have been playing with Shaq because they had to a little bit split that stardom
Dilutes
in LA. It dilutes it a little bit. The other, he was pretty tenacious and intense, but so was Michael Jordan. Because I was thinking the other 2, Magic Johnson and LeBron, they're kind of, they don't have that crazy intensity that can maybe put off some people. But Michael Jordan had that, and he was the face of the league. But somehow his was super endearing to everybody. I don't know, Scott. What do you think?
While there were a lot of similarities between his game and MJ, I think something in the game itself was changing when MJ left and Kobe took over. I think it was a big man sport at that point. And it was still very much centered around the center and the power forwards. You had Tim Duncan, you had Shaq, you had Dirk, you had, all of those guys really kind of taking up the helm. Sheed Wallace, all those big men were the face of the NBA at the time. And I think Kobe was just slotted in underneath them and stuff. So I think Kobe just entered into an era that was different than everybody else.
Look at this conversation that we're having right now. We're nitpicking Kobe Bryant, one of the best basketball players.
Ridiculous.
Okay, but my point being and I think it's fair because within the context of this conversation that we're trying to argue, is this person a face of a league or not? And what it boils down to, it is so rare to have somebody that is definitively a face of the league. So rare to the point that in the NBA's however many year history, however many decades it's been, they've had 3, maybe you can argue 4 if you really get into it. And now the WNBA has this opportunity with Caitlin Clark, who is showing all of those characteristics that those other faces of the NBA had. Granted, it's a little bit different, but she has all of those elements. And it feels like the WNBA is rejecting it instead of embracing it. That's sort of my issue here because it is such a rare thing. Why would you not want to elevate it?
This might cut against the argument a little bit because Magic Johnson was the face, but I think just based on when his scandal occurred and, the HIV positive story and everything broke, it was a little later in his career. And MJ was just entering into the league toward the twilight of Magic's career. So he was able to kind of take up the helm quickly in that regard. And I think Kobe was approaching being the face of the league. And then he had the off court scandal as well that went on. And I think that damaged his ability to actually take it to the next level and become that marketable guy that MJ was, because MJ didn't really have that off-field sort of scandal nature as far as we know, so like either they did a really good job at hiding things or he was just, more of a straight and narrow in that regard. So I think there's a off-court issues that probably got in the way of Kobe, and Caitlin is seemingly so far not participating in any off-court issues either. So I think it's appropriate to say she is the face.
Well, I think that there's kind of that's a great point, is that to be a face of a league, you have to have, being corporate is maybe not the right word, but you have to be pretty marketable friendly, and having something like that really damages the opportunity. I mean, say what you will about LeBron James. He has not had a legitimate scandal other than pretending to read his books, which in the grand scheme of things, that makes him a saint compared to some other athletes. And that's why it's been so clear that he's been able to be the face of the NBA.
I don't know. They lost the librarian community, though. That's some NBA viewership. Librarians around the country denounced LeBron James.
Do you think that's why the NBA viewership is down? The librarians, Mike?
Librarians. I don't know. That's my hot take.
That's a good hot take. So I don't know. We can go on and on about this because it is kind of a subjective thing. But I'm in full support of the WNBA totally embracing Caitlin Clark as the next face of their league. Now, we talked last time about, could a European player be the face of the NBA? And we've been talking about some of these guys, Jokic, Luka. Luka, obviously, after being traded by the Mavs to LA, I'm pulling up here what is quite possibly one of the coolest photos I have ever seen. And for those just listening, I'm sorry, I can't do this justice. You're going to have to just look. Luka staring at Nico Harrison, the GM of the Mavs, who traded him away. This is their first time playing since the trade. Luka put up a triple-double, and this should win a Pulitzer Prize right here. What's your take? I
don't know what it is, but there's something about 2025 that's really capturing some great photographic moments. So like we had the Jalen, I don't know if we even showed it on the show, but the Jalen Hurts post Super Bowl photos that came out of that, dude, those were some all-time ones. I know we got the one with the trophy and everything and the cigar, so that was like akin to an MJ photo. But dude, this one is awesome, and I'm pretty sure that Luka has this already framed in his home somewhere in LA, because this is cold. And he went for a triple-double, no?
Yeah, he went for a triple-double. I'm gonna get this framed in my house too. This is just motivating as hell. There's something, like, I'm a video guy, but there's something about a photo that sometimes can be even more powerful than a video clip. Like, they like to say a picture speaks 1,000 words, but sometimes a photo can speak more words even than a video, which is kind of counterintuitive, but maybe it leaves some of the story up to your imagination, because who knows what exactly went down at this moment. And maybe he was just glancing by accidentally. But from what we can perceive here, Luka is staring him down, and there's an entire story wrapped up in that photo. the Jalen Hurts one that you were talking about was also super iconic. So we're getting a lot of good sports photos. Sticking with the Luka conversation, we're talking about how can he be the face of the league as a European player? And want to throw this up. Okay, this is kind of a joke. This is of Jokic, Nikola Jokic, drinking a beer. Okay, shirt off, not looking great. Yeah, Nico would have traded Nikola. Starting to think this MF doesn't like Europeans. Now, this is an interesting conversation because this has kind of been at the forefront of sports talk for the last few weeks because of the Luka conversation, because so much of the criticism coming out of the Mavs camp was, oh, he was not coming in shape. He was overweight. There's this famous clip of Nico Harrison grabbing a beer out of his hand after one of the games, I think when they won the Western Conference Finals.
Oh, was that Nico that actually did that?
I believe so. It might have been their assistant GM. We gotta check that.
But either way, it's same energy. I get what
either way, right? And now after living in Europe and playing professional sports here, I just have to say there is a different culture surrounding some of these things. And I do think that some of the European players get judged slightly more harshly through the American lens of athletics.
I feel like the TB12 method we're talking about an infectious sort of movement in a locker room. I feel like that has taken over all sports. To a certain degree, they go and enjoy themselves, but it's not to the same level that like dudes of the earlier 2000s came together in teams, like bonded off the court or off the field or off the pitch or anything along those lines. They were able to like, for all intents and purposes, party together and form that bond at a deeper level than just on the field. And I feel like that's starting to fade away as people are so heavily focused on their health and wellness and everything like that. And that's a diminishing element to building out a locker room and a team. So like, what are your guys' thoughts on that?
Mike, you have something? Go ahead, Mike.
Okay. I think like the best teams bond through a shared pursuit of greatness. Like they share, like you train hard together. Like you bond better with somebody that you train your ass off with consistently than someone you go party with. Like a party bond is the weakest bond ever. Like a hangout bond, that's the weakest bond that exists. The strong teams and strong bonds are bonds where we are holding each other with high standard. Like, all right, let's go. Let's wake up early. Let's train together. Let's go to bed early. Let's hold each other to this standard and be accountable to these high inputs. That bonds you so much stronger than just like, hey, you want to go grab a coffee? You want to go hang out? And I think, and like, look at like the Florida Gators, that documentary about Tim Tebow, in that like those intense teams, like they were upset. Like Friday nights, they were lifting together. They weren't out partying. Like their culture was, let's get better together as bonding.
Well, Mike, one of those guys killed two people, though, so I don't know how good that culture ended up being. But I hear your point.
Agree with you. Look, I agree with you, Mikey. I just wanted to pose the question because it's like I think Pat McAfee has been pretty loud on this, and I somewhat agree with him. Teams bond more over a keg than over kale. And that doesn't mean that they're not going through the rigors of being a team and working out together, but it's an additional element to help round out the entire essence of what it means to be a team.
My experience of playing college football at Oregon State and the bonds that I made there versus the bonds that I made in Europe, but like over the course of a season, the focus in European football of bonding was more so about party after the game, like
the
getting together, great bonding. And that's like a different kind of bond. It's like more of like a friendship bonding. But the bonds that I made from the guys in college, obviously it's more time and more intense, but like that kind of time together was so much stronger. And so I think that example of like the kale versus keg argument goes to an extent, but I think it should be like 70-30 kale.
Well, this is what Nick's bringing up though, is that's the American lens that you're viewing it through.
Try and look through this with the lens of your European Italian passport. It's funny that we bring this up because I had this for the last episode. We didn't get to it, but Lawrence Taylor, okay, when he got drafted, he says he does not remember the night he got drafted because he drank 41 Coors Lights that day, and he turned out to be one of the greats. Okay, now this is a little bit different because, this is not necessarily bonding with your teammates, but I do think there was a little bit of a different sports culture, even in America. I do think it remains in Europe, and Mikey, you and I have gotten to experience that firsthand, but maybe in the 90s, in the 80s, in the 70s for sure, they were, smoking cigarettes and eating hot dogs at halftime. But there's something lost about this kind of this brutal, not so clinical take on sports. Because I mean, granted, all of this is bad for you, but this is also psychotic behavior that we then saw translated onto the football field. Everybody now, for the most part, is so buttoned up. We're complaining about the lack of emotion and intensity in the NBA and also to the NFL to some extent. And it's probably because these guys aren't crushing beers anymore.
Look, there's absolutely a balance to be had here and a balance to be struck here. And I feel like the pendulum has swung so far, because it was very far, obviously, as you were mentioning, in those previous decades. But it swung so far to a point that I think we're actually getting a lot of teams that are like far too formulaic, far too utilitarian, and far too like just sterile for all intents and purposes. Like it's just like, okay, this is how it's supposed to be formed and this is the way it is, as opposed to like, dude, there's a lack of humanity or human element to these teams right now, because they're functioning like robotic organizations, as opposed to like, hey, even a casual fan can connect with Lawrence Taylor in this story and be like, oh man, like that's crazy. And that's not supporting this
cocaine audience.
This is okay. This is not supporting that sort of behavior. I'm just, there's an element of truth in that.
I completely agree. Because when you, like you're saying, you can get too sterile, you can get too tense, and that can leak into just way too tense play, and you lose that looseness where you're playing best and like your flow.
Yeah, maybe you just have a couple beers before the game, a little bit loose.
Well, that's what Marshawn Lynch would do.
And
2 shots of Hennessy and so a couple other. I think Brian Dawkins would have a couple shots.
We mentioned here kind of the sterile nature of some sports and kind of losing a lack of a human element or human connection. This is kind of wild to me. And I got to get your guys' thoughts on it. And speaking of losing a human element to a sport.
Challenging the strike call.
And why not right here? Let's see. Well, he's going to win it.
He pitches the ball.
Let's see the distance.
We've had this conversation about bringing in some more technology into the officiating in the NFL, what have you. What are your thoughts on this, on baseball starting to use this technology? And the end game here is completely phasing out umpires. Is it not okay for baseball to have the human element of the officiating, but it is okay for basketball and football? I mean, I think across all sports, this is just the reality of it. Like, in certain football games, hey, these guys, they're gonna call holding. They're gonna be much more quick to throw the flag for holding. Or in basketball, hey, these guys actually, they're not going to really call fouls. It's going to be a physical game. And so that comes into play. And why should baseball not have that kind of variation?
Well, I think baseball's a little different because nothing's moving 100 miles an hour in football or basketball. Baseball, you're relying on the ump to eyeball 100-mile-an-hour moving target within a 1-foot square. Like, that's a crazy ask for any human. I can't believe they haven't had some technological aid for these guys sooner. Because like football and basketball, nothing's moving 100 miles an hour. That you're just squinting and
except me when I read ISO and I get in the backfield. That's 100 miles an hour.
To your question, Nick, I think baseball is different, as Mikey's pointing out here, because it's such a game of granular detail, and it's only an aid to the umpires who are trying their darndest. We all know that, except, a lot of people have thoughts on Angel Hernandez, who is now out of the league.
Yeah, but I mean, like it varies from ballpark to ballpark how far a home run is, and that's interesting. I mean, like why should we take away this aspect? I mean, part of sports also is the psychological aspect and the mental aspect, and like. I mean, some of the best athletes, like Michael Jordan, you know what he was really damn good at, aside from every aspect of basketball, was gaming the referees and getting fouls in his favor. And that was also part of his greatness. What about a pitcher being able to do the equivalent?
The home run variation is interesting, but it's only interesting insofar as the ball hits the bat. And if you're not giving the opportunity because some ump decides that something that isn't a strike is a strike, or vice versa, then you're actually eliminating that element of intrigue with the distances and everything like that because guys won't actually hit the ball.
That's fair.
But versus controlling the input of the pitch itself. You know,
That's fair. And also, I think the point that you said that hit home for me was, I mean, we in the last episode we showed that clip of the young basketball player who was trying his darndest to game the ref and doing that egregious flop that I think is a symbol of decaying culture at large. And so, you know what, you've got something there. You do have something there. I just don't want to see robots take over all of our sports because look at this. But this I'm actually okay with, though. I mean, this I'm okay with. Hold on. Because we talked about this. The NFL says it's planning to put in electronic systems to measure first downs into motion this upcoming regular season in 2025. Chain crew would still remain on the sideline as a backup, but this is finally happening. So I do think you guys are both, I'm kind of on the other side here, but I think you guys do have credibility in the point of using technology to judge things that are essentially objective. Like it's either in this strike zone square or not. The ball either crossed this line or not. So I think with that, I'm okay. Where do you stand?
I would like to see technology at least utilized to help umpires and referees as opposed to replacing them right now. I don't know if the relationship of technology helping them isn't good, then we need to have a more serious conversation about the replacement potentially. But I think right now, as it sits, it should be a symbiotic relationship moving forward.
Yeah. So you guys you're good with this, the NFL using this for their first down markers.
Yeah.
Good. Okay.
But the chain crew would remain on the sideline as a backup. So they're going to be on the side. If the robot can't figure it out, they're going to trust the human eye.
You telling me, Frank?
And this robot can figure it out. What do you think from over there?
No,
Bro.
we can never get rid of chain crews just because optically it's such an important part of football culture.
Yeah.
It's like,
or else what else are the dads going to do during youth football games?
yeah. Hey, I can't wait for that portion of my life where I got to be chain crew our children's football game. Scott?
Can we at least get the chain crew guys some sort of like leg protection though? Because I feel like over the past decade, I've seen so many just absolutely demolished lower tibias and fibias and just like dangling ankles because guys get rolled up on because they can't drop the sticks fast enough and get out of the way.
Look, it's a dangerous job. It's not for everybody. You got, okay? Like these guys are the cream of the crop if they're doing chain crew, especially in the NFL. So that's part of the dangers of the job. All right. So we're for some technological aid in referees and umpires' lives. Just don't let robots take over sports. Okay.
Yes.
And American sports fans, let's be a little bit more gracious when our European brethren come in and want to have a beer after the game. Okay. It's okay.
Yeah. I would say if it starts affecting play, that's when you should be concerned. If it's not affecting play, like, what are we doing?
Well, with these European guys, it affects their play if they don't get their beer.
Yeah, I know.
So that's kind of, you got to let it happen. And this is something that Nico Harrison just couldn't understand. And that's why he's going to be fired in 2 years. All right. There we have it. Thank you, everybody, for watching. And we'll see you on Monday.